You ever walk past a room in your own home and feel like it's watching you? Not the kind of feeling where you forget to turn the lights off or you think you left something inside, but a chill, a tension in the air, like the room itself is aware. That's what I've been living with. I didn't notice it at first. Life was busy. My wife and I both worked full-time. Our 6-year-old son was starting first grade, and everything felt normal until he said the one thing that changed everything. "Daddy, someone lives in the guest room." And here's the strange part, my wife refuses to even go near it. Listen closely, because if you've ever experienced a gut feeling that something's off in your house, you're going to want to hear this. I'm not just telling you another spooky tale. This one happened to me. This isn't a haunted house story you can just laugh off. This is about family. This is about trust. And it's about what you do when the people you love start keeping secrets from you in your own home. I promise, by the time we reach the end of the story, you'll understand what's really going on in that room and why my wife is so afraid of it. But you need to stick with me, because nothing is what it seems. Let me be real with you for a second. I know there's a lot of fake stuff on YouTube. Stories that start off scary and end up being about dreams or ghosts that were just in their heads. That's not what this is. I don't do clickbait. I'm here to tell you something that shook me to my core. Something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And I'm talking to you like I'd talk to a friend, because I don't know who else I can trust right now. So, before you scroll away or skip to the end, just know, the answer you're looking for is here, but it's hidden in the details. Every second of this story matters. It started on a Saturday morning. The kind of morning where the air is heavy, not with weather, but with something else. My wife, Claire, was already up, acting jumpy. Not her usual half-asleep, coffee before conversation self. She kept glancing down the hall toward the guest room. The one we barely use. And when I asked if her mom was coming to stay, because that's the only time we even open that door, she snapped. "No. Just leave it shut." Then she quickly changed the subject like she always does when she's hiding something. Now, I don't know if you're married or ever lived with someone long enough to read their moods, but when a person avoids talking about a room in your house, something's wrong. I should have pushed her on it. I should have asked more. But I didn't. It wasn't until that night, when I was tucking our son, Eli, into bed, that he said it again. "The lady in the guest room asked me not to tell Mommy." My heart stopped. You ever hear your kid say something so creepy it short-circuits your brain? I chuckled nervously and asked, "What lady?" He looked serious, like the kind of serious 6-year-olds don't usually pull off. "The one with the long hair. She's nice, but she cries a lot." Now, pause with me here. What would you do? What do you even say to that? There was no one else in the house. We live in a quiet suburban neighborhood. We have alarms, locks, and motion lights. It didn't make sense. But my son wasn't playing pretend. Kids his age say wild stuff, sure, but this wasn't make-believe. It was too specific. Too real. I didn't sleep that night. I laid awake next to Claire, watching the hallway in the dim light from our bedroom. The guest room door was shut, as always, but now it felt louder somehow. Not physically, but emotionally, like it was screaming behind that silence. The next morning, I finally confronted Claire. I told her what Eli said. Her reaction? She turned pale, looked me straight in the eyes, and whispered, "You need to never let him go near that room again." No explanation. No details. Just that. Then she locked herself in the bathroom and cried for nearly an hour. At this point, I knew something had happened. Something she wasn't telling me. And I don't know about you, but I'm the kind of person who needs to know. Not just because I'm a dad and I need to keep my kids safe, but because whatever was happening in my house behind that door was threatening everything I thought I knew about my family. So I started digging. Not online, not ghost hunting or anything dramatic. I started with my wife's past. Old photos. Old journals. Things she hadn't touched in years. And slowly, patterns began to form. Things that made sense in the way puzzle pieces make sense when you finally rotate one the right way. Something happened to Claire a long time ago, something tied to that room. And someone might still be there. Or something. This is where it gets worse. That night, I heard whispering. Not the kind you think you hear when a TV's on low in another room. I mean clear, deliberate whispers. My wife was asleep. My son was asleep. I followed the sound, slowly, quietly, down the hallway. The door to the guest room? It was open. Just a crack, but wide enough for a shadow to slip through. Now, before I tell you what I saw, I want you to think for a moment. Imagine your entire life has felt normal, safe, predictable. You kiss your wife, you hug your kid, you make coffee, you go to work. That's all it's ever been. But what if the one room you never thought twice about is the one place in your home that doesn't belong to you at all? I stepped forward. The floorboards creaked. The air in front of that room felt ice cold. I reached out, my hand trembling, ready to push the door open. And just then I heard a voice behind me whisper my name. But when I turned around, no one was there, and that's where everything changed. I didn't sleep for the next 2 nights after that. I couldn't. Every creak in the hallway made my skin crawl. Every rustle of wind outside made me check the windows twice. But what really kept me up was the way Claire pretended like nothing was wrong. She moved through the house like a ghost herself, quiet, distant, watching me when she thought I wasn't looking. And every time she passed that guest room, I noticed her eyes dart toward the door like she was expecting something, or someone, to be standing there. I tried bringing it up again, asking her what she meant when she said not to let Eli near that room, but she shut me down with a cold, "I don't want to talk about it." And that was it. No explanation, no hint, just walls going up. The kind you can't climb over, no matter how close you are to someone. That was the moment I realized I was going to have to figure this out on my own. I had to protect my son, even if it meant digging into things my wife clearly didn't want me to find. The following day, I took a personal day from work. I waited until Claire dropped Eli at school, and then I went back home and opened the guest room door fully for the first time in months. The room was cold. Not drafty, cold, like walking into a basement in the middle of winter. The windows were shut, the curtains drawn, and there was this faint smell, like lavender mixed with mildew. It reminded me of an old nursing home I used to visit with my grandmother when I was a kid. Everything inside was in place. The bed made, the mirror above the dresser spotless, the rocking chair by the window untouched. But it didn't feel empty. It felt paused. Like whoever had last been here hadn't left, just stepped out for a moment. That chair, especially. It faced the window, angled just enough to make you think someone might still be sitting there. I reached for it, almost instinctively, and, before I could even touch the armrest, I heard it, 3 soft knocks. From the inside of the closet. My body locked. For a full 5 seconds, I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I slowly turned toward the closet door, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break my ribs. I walked forward, each step heavier than the last, and just as I reached for the handle, my phone rang. It was Claire. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Instead, I opened the closet. Nothing. Just coats, old shoes, a stack of boxes we hadn't touched since we moved in. But I noticed something new, a notebook wedged behind one of the boxes. I pulled it out and recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Claire's. Pages and pages filled with entries that didn't make any sense. She was writing to someone named M. She kept apologizing. Over and over. I didn't know what else to do, M. Please forgive me. And then one sentence, underlined so hard the pen tore through the paper. She said she'd take him if I didn't keep my promise. I couldn't make sense of it. Who was she? And more importantly, who was him? I wanted to confront Claire right then, but something told me to wait. If she was hiding this, there was a reason. And if I confronted her too soon, I'd lose the chance to find out the truth. That night, I decided to set up a camera in the guest room. I didn't tell Claire. I told myself it was for my son's safety, but deep down I just needed to know I wasn't going crazy. I placed a small motion-activated camera on the bookshelf facing the bed and went about the rest of the day as if nothing had changed. What I saw on the footage the next morning made me question everything I thought I understood about our house and about my wife. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the camera recorded the sound of the rocking chair creaking. And then the mirror. The mirror on the dresser fogged up from the inside. I watched it happen. No one in the room, no change in temperature, no movement, just the glass clouding up like someone had breathed on it. And then, slowly, almost childlike, a handprint appeared. Not a full hand. A small one, like a child's. That same morning, I noticed Eli drawing something at breakfast. He usually scribbles superheroes or dragons, but this time it was different. It was our house. And in one of the upstairs windows, he drew a face. I asked him who it was, and without missing a beat, he said, "That's the girl who lives in the room Mommy doesn't like." I stared at the picture for a long time, not knowing what to say. I wanted to dismiss it as imagination. Kids say wild things, right? But the timing, the drawing, the handprint, the whispers, it was all starting to point in one direction. And it was a direction I didn't want to go. As the days passed, the energy in the house changed. Lights began flickering in that part of the hallway. I'd find the guest room door cracked open even after I was sure I'd shut it. And one night, I heard Eli talking in his room. I thought maybe he was playing with a toy or whispering in his sleep. But when I opened the door, he was sitting up in bed, staring at the hallway. I asked who he was talking to, and he simply said, "Her name is Mira. She doesn't want to be alone anymore." I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. But before I could, things took another turn. Claire's younger sister, Ava, came to visit unexpectedly. She'd always been the wild one, into tarot cards, crystals, energy work, the kind of stuff Claire dismissed as nonsense. But when Ava stepped into the house, she froze. I saw her eyes lock onto the hallway, and she didn't even say hello. She just whispered, "You brought her here?" I asked what she meant, and she said something I'll never forget. Mira. She was supposed to be gone. That was the first time anyone had said the name aloud besides Eli. That was the first time I truly felt fear, not just for my son or for myself, but for my wife. Because whatever Mira was, Claire had known her, and she hadn't told me. At that moment, it became clear that this wasn't just about a ghost story or a creepy kid seeing shadows. This was something older, deeper. A secret that had been buried long before I ever stepped into that house. I cornered Ava later that night. She was hesitant to talk, but finally gave me pieces of the story. When they were kids, Claire had a friend, an imaginary one, according to their parents. A girl named Mira, who lived in their attic. Claire used to leave little gifts for her. Bracelets, toys, letters. Then one day, something happened. Ava didn't know the full details, but she remembered their parents fighting. She remembered screaming. And she remembered their mother boarding up the attic door and saying, "We don't speak of Mira again." It didn't make any sense. Why would Mira be here now? Why this house? Ava didn't know, but she said sometimes, when something attaches itself to you as a child, it doesn't forget you. It follows. Waits. And when the time is right, it finds its way back. I still haven't told Claire what I know. I'm scared of what it might do to her. I'm scared of what the truth really is. But something tells me this is far from over. Because last night, I checked the footage again. And this time, the handprint on the mirror had writing below it. Just one word, smeared in the condensation. Soon. And I swear to you, I heard a girl laughing from behind the door. Now the real question is, what is she waiting for? If you've made it this far, hold on tight because what comes next will shake the very ground the story stands on. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when I finally uncover what my wife has been hiding all these years. You won't believe who Mira really is. I didn't sleep at all after I saw the word soon scrawled into the fog on that mirror. The image replayed in my mind over and over, not just because it was terrifying, but because I had no idea what it meant, or worse, who it was meant for. Was it a warning? A promise? A threat? Claire noticed something was off the next morning, but I played dumb. I had to. The more I tried to dig into this thing, the more I realized how carefully Claire had been hiding it. But the cracks were showing. She'd become distant, paranoid. She kept double-locking the guest room door, even when no one mentioned it. She started sleeping with Eli again, like she was afraid something would try to take him. And that's when it hit me. Maybe this wasn't about the house. Maybe it never was. Maybe whatever this was had always been about him. I went back to that notebook I found in the closet. I flipped through the pages again, slower this time, reading every entry. Somewhere around the middle, I found a date. It was almost 6 years ago, 2 weeks before Eli was born. The writing was shaky, rushed. It read, "I made the deal to protect him. She said she'd leave us alone if I gave her a space. I didn't think she'd still be waiting." That line hit me like a punch to the chest. A deal? My wife made a deal. With who? And for what? I thought back to our struggles before Eli. The miscarriages. The doctors with no answers. The endless nights spent praying for a child. Claire never wanted to talk about it afterward. She just said she was grateful it worked out. But now I wondered, what if it hadn't just worked out? What if it came with a cost we never understood? Ava stayed another night, and that's when things took a darker turn. Around 2 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of shattering glass. I rushed to the hallway and found Ava standing outside the guest room, barefoot, holding a picture frame in her hand like a weapon. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, and she was whispering something over and over. "It's not her. It's not her." I tried to calm her down, but she wouldn't even look at me. Just kept pointing at the mirror and saying, "She's wearing Claire's face." We called an emergency therapist the next day, thinking maybe Ava had a breakdown. But even as I said the words to the doctor, I didn't believe them. Something else was going on. Something Ava saw that she couldn't process. She left the next morning without saying goodbye, and before she did, she handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a page torn from Claire's old journal. On it was a crude drawing of a woman. Long black hair, eyes blacked out, mouth stitched shut, and below it, just 3 words. "She lives here." I knew I had to confront Claire, but I needed more. More proof. More truth. I had a friend in tech who owed me a favor, so I sent him the raw video files from the guest room footage. I didn't tell him what to look for. Just asked him to scan for anomalies. He called me the next evening, quiet at first, like he didn't know how to say what he needed to say. Then finally, "You said no one was in the room, right?" I confirmed. "Then how come there's a shadow that moves across the mirror every night at the same exact time, 3:17 a.m., but only appears in the reflection, never in the physical space?" My blood ran cold. It confirmed what I already suspected. We weren't just being haunted. We were being watched. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. That night, after Claire went to bed, I went into the guest room alone. I sat in the rocking chair, turned off all the lights, and waited. The house was so quiet I could hear the fridge humming downstairs, the tick of the wall clock in the hallway. Then, at exactly 3:17, the mirror began to fog. But this time, there was no handprint, no message. Just a figure, blurry at first, then slowly taking shape. A woman, long dark hair, but the face, it was wrong. The features shifted like smoke, changing from one face to another. I recognized one of them. It was Claire. And then, just for a split second, it changed into a face I didn't know, but it looked like Eli. Not older, not younger, but like a version of him that never got to exist. The next day, I confronted Claire. I showed her the footage, the journals, the drawings, and she broke. Not in anger, not in fear, but in guilt. She told me everything. Years ago, after her final miscarriage, she was broken, hopeless. She started seeing someone, a woman, an energy healer, someone Ava introduced her to. This woman claimed she could help, that she could deliver the soul that was waiting. But in return, Claire had to make space. A room, a door, a mirror. Somewhere she could exist, in case she ever wanted to return. Claire thought it was all metaphorical, symbolic. She was desperate. And when she got pregnant with Eli, she didn't question it. But after he was born, she started to see the shadows, hear the whispers. And every year on his birthday, the mirror would fog up, always at 3:17 a.m. She thought if she ignored it, it would go away. But it never did, because Mira had never left. And then came the twist that nearly knocked me off my feet. Claire admitted that Eli wasn't her firstborn. There was another, a girl.
Stillborn.
delivered silently in the same hospital. She never told me. She buried the memory, the pain, and convinced herself that Eli was her only child. But she'd made the deal to bring back the soul of her firstborn, and Mira was that soul. But something went wrong. Mira didn't return as a baby. She returned as she was, trapped between worlds. And now, after all these years, she wasn't content with just a room. She wanted a body, a life, one that she believed belonged to her. I don't even remember standing up. I don't remember leaving the room. The only thing I remember clearly is the sound of Eli laughing, but not from his bedroom. From the guest room. That's when I realized we were out of time. And that was the last moment everything still felt somewhat normal. I ran toward the guest room so fast I barely felt my feet hitting the floor, calling Eli's name louder than I ever had before. That sound, his laughter coming from behind that door, was wrong. Not just misplaced, but split, like it had been doubled or echoed by something pretending to be him. I burst through the door without thinking, heart in my throat, and the air inside hit me like a wall of ice. The temperature had dropped so low that my breath came out in puffs. The lights flickered once, then went dead. In the glow of the hallway behind me, I saw Eli standing at the foot of the bed, looking up at the mirror with that distant, trance-like expression I'd only ever seen once before, on Claire the night she broke down. I called to him, stepped toward him, but he didn't even flinch. And in the mirror, she was there, Mira. Her face wasn't fully formed, her eyes hollow, her body half shadow, half light, like she hadn't fully decided if she belonged in this world or the next. She turned to look at me through the glass, not in anger, but with something worse, recognition. Claire came in behind me, breathless and pale, whispering my name like it was the only word she had left. When she saw Mira, she didn't scream. She fell to her knees and whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this." Myra's expression didn't change. But Eli finally turned to face me, and in that moment I saw something that nearly shattered me, his eyes. They were his, but they weren't only his. It was like someone else was trying to look through them. I didn't know what to do, didn't know what to say, but then something in me snapped. I dropped to my knees and wrapped my arms around him, pulled him in tight, and whispered, "You're mine. You're real. You're here." For a second, the cold lifted. I could feel warmth return to the room, barely. Then Mira screamed. It wasn't a scream like a person. It was like metal being torn open, like a storm moving through bone. The mirror began to crack, spiderweb fractures running out from the center where her face had been. And then it shattered completely, exploding outward. Claire pulled Eli to her and shielded him as shards scattered across the floor. I stood, bleeding from my cheek, trying to understand what had just happened. But the room was empty. No ghost. No fog. No laughter. Just silence. Just stillness. That night, we didn't speak much. Eli fell asleep between us in our bed, like he had when he was little. Claire didn't cry. I didn't ask questions. It was like we both knew that whatever we had invited in had finally been cast out, but not destroyed. Just displaced. The next morning, we took a sledgehammer to that mirror frame, then pulled the guest room apart piece by piece. We donated the furniture, repainted the walls, replaced the carpet. We turned it into a playroom, full of sunlight and toys and color. But even now, when I walk past it at night, sometimes I feel that old cold on the back of my neck. Not strong. Not threatening. Just present. Like a memory that refuses to die. Claire eventually opened up about everything, the stillbirth, the grief, the rituals she'd tried in secret, the promises made in moments of desperation. She admitted she never believed they'd really work, but something about that final time, something about Mira felt different, more real. It broke her to know she might have brought something back that didn't want to leave. Ava, who we hadn't heard from in weeks, finally responded to our messages. She said she'd spoken with a medium, someone who understood what might have happened. According to her, Mira was never meant to come back in pieces. When Claire made the deal, she hadn't given permission for a second life, she'd given space. But space, once offered, can be occupied by anything, not just a lost child. Not just a soul looking for home, but something darker. Something wearing grief like a mask. That was the twist none of us had been prepared for. Mira may have been the soul of Claire's first child. But what came through? That wasn't just Mira. That was something else. Something that used Myra's memory to gain entry. Something that latched onto our son, not to harm him, but to use him.
To anchor itself to him.
That's why Eli never seemed afraid. That's why he spoke about her like she was a friend. He wasn't being haunted. He was being groomed. Raised with her presence, so she could eventually take root in his identity. But here's where it gets even more twisted. When we burned the last piece of the mirror and buried the ashes, I found something inside the frame we'd never noticed. A folded photograph. Black and white. Faded almost beyond recognition. It was a picture of a little girl standing in front of a mirror, long dark hair, pale eyes, and stitched lips. And on the back, written in old pen, Mira, do not invite her in. We keep that photo now, locked in a box in the attic, not as a reminder of the horror we lived through, but as proof. Proof that some things, some choices, don't just disappear when the ritual ends or the mirror breaks. They echo. And they wait. Because grief has a shape. And sometimes, if you're not careful, it learns how to knock. So, if you've ever walked past a room in your house and felt like it was watching you, don't ignore it. If your child speaks to someone who isn't there, don't brush it off. And if you ever make a wish out of pain, out of loneliness, out of loss, make sure no one's listening. Because there's always something listening, waiting, hoping you'll open the door. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If it chilled you, or made you think twice about what lives in the quiet corners of your home, go ahead and drop a like. It helps more than you know. And subscribe for more real horror stories, mysteries, and creepy experiences you won't find anywhere else. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and never, ever leave a mirror uncovered after midnight.